The galaxy is a big place. Without FTL, it would take years to even reach neighboring stars, let alone ones across the galaxy. For millennia, there were only two methods of FTL travel: wormholes and crunch drives. Wormholes work by creating a shortcut through space, allowing near instantaneous travel between 2 points, though it requires significant infrastructure to maintain it, so it's only used between developed systems. Crunch drives, on the other hand, were used in more isolated systems, as well as the military. It works by creating a temporary tunnel of compressed space, compressing the distance the ship needs to travel, hence reducing travel times. Both methods don't actually move the ship, and still require engines to cross the distance. Around 6,000 years ago, another method was discovered. Discovered by complete accident, scientists from the Union of the Twin Suns found a way to cross into other universes. While most of the universes were strangely identical to our own in both composition and physics, one stood out: Terra space. All of the known universes bordering home space are either slightly younger or older than it. Terra space, on the other hand, is extremely young, being less than 1 million years old. This means that it is extremely compressed compared to home space, having had not much time to expand. This leaves it in a unique position to be used as an interstellar travel medium. Distance is translated between universes, where if you enter another universe, move, and re-enter home space, you would move the appropriate distance. Because Terra space is more compressed than home space, this leads to the distance traveled in Terra space to be magnified once re-entering home space. Terra space is approximately 1,102 times more compressed than home space, having more than 4 times the spatial compression that crunch drive can sustain. Thus, a ship on it would appear to travel 4 times faster than one using a conventional crunch drive. This significantly higher speed means that Terra space is an incredibly useful asset to the UGDF, and hence an incredibly closely guarded secret, since Point Watch still uses crunch drives. Not even UGDF allied nations are allowed to have access to it, with them having to use UGDF Terra engines to access it instead. Entry into Terra space is only permitted through the use of Terra engines, gargantuan machines that tear holes in space-time and bridge home space and Terra space. Similar to the crunch drive, this leaves interstellar travel around undeveloped systems to center around massive ISVs ferrying cargo, ships, and people between stars. Because Terra space is so young, matter hasn't had enough time to come together into stars and persist as gas clouds. This means that even interstellar space has a matter density similar to Pluto's atmosphere. While the gas itself isn't an issue to shielded ships, the main problem is the heat that gas emits. Terra space is so young that all the matter in it is still hot enough to emit a faint crimson glow. This becomes an issue, since radiators become useless, as they end up absorbing heat instead of radiating it. This forces anything in Terra space to rely on heat sinks, limiting the amount of time you can stay in it without heating to failure. For example, Terra engines can only stay in Terra space for 52 days before they have to re-enter home space to vent heat. More permanent installations are possible through a constant supply of heat sinks, swapping out the hot ones for cold ones. Typically, these are used for communication, as it not only allows for a faster signal, it is also uninterceptable, as Point Watch has no access to Terra space. This helps supplement the instant but very low bitrate entanglement comms. This form of communication is used in place of wormholes in less developed systems, as well as by military fleets. Aside from being used as a medium for interstellar travel and communication, Terra space is also incredibly useful for stealth and concealment. Anything in it is invisible to any sensors in home space. The only warning you will get is a radiation spike just before the hole is torn open. This allows Terra engines to get a drop on any enemy positions, quickly deploying its fleet of ships before dipping back into Terra space. Unfortunately, this doesn't work over interstellar distances, as the length of the deceleration burn as well as the heat generated by it means that Terra engines need to burn in home space, so you can only use this tactic once you've slowed down an unknown system. Terra space didn't only revolutionize interstellar travel, It also revolutionized energy generation as well. It came in the form of Orum. The unique physics of tear space has produced exotic forms of matter, ones that don't exist in our own universe. One of which, once stabilized and refined, becomes an incredibly energy-dense fuel, one rivaling antimatter in power, but much easier to use and handle. The fuel itself is safe to handle by hand, coming in the form of pellets. Once the fuel is detonated by being compressed, it emits all of its energy in the form of IR radiation. Unlike antimatter, which emits gamma rays, the infrared that Orum emits is much easier to work with. This allows it to be used nearly anywhere in place of fusion. The reactors are able to be made much more compact while keeping a high power output, ideal for use in smaller frames and vehicles. These microreactors use the radiation emitted by Orum to superheat water, which boils to become steam, which of course is used to spin a turbine to generate electricity. Bigger, more powerful, more efficient reactors instead vaporize the water into a plasma, using it to directly interact with a magnetic field to generate power. These are used in ships and stations. In order to run efficiently, these direct magnetic reactors need to run their plasma extremely hot, which means anything using them needs really good radiators. The immense heat released by Orum also makes it a perfect fuel for rocket engines. Similar to thermal rockets, it is used to superheat reaction mass, turning it into a plasma which is forced out of a magnetic nozzle. Unlike the pellets used in power generation, which only contain Orum, the pellets used in rocket engines also contain the reaction mass in the form of a solid shell surrounding the fuel. The extreme temperatures generated in these engines make them both extremely powerful and extremely efficient. Enough so that these are able to push ships up to 99% C, similar to the most powerful antimatter rockets. So unlike them, the ease of storage allows the ships to be smaller than their antimatter counterparts, as well as less vulnerable to damage. Of course, one last use for Orum is for weaponry. Even just 1 gram of Orum is comparable to 43 kilotons of TNT. The UGDF has effectively replaced nearly all of its fusion weaponry with it, with the sole exception of nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers. Explosive-based compression systems, similar to that of fission bombs, are used in warheads. While too big to be used in infantry-sized railguns, they do fit in the warheads used by heavy frame and star frame weaponry. Since Orum only emits infrared, it does come with the upside of producing zero radioactive fallout, though that is not really a factor in their adoption, as clean nukes have long been in service. Considering both sides are nearly entirely mechanical in nature, the actual effects of any nuclear fallout poses no threat, instead just poisoning the planet and surroundings for no reason. A bigger factor is that nuclear-sized payloads can be put into much smaller form factors, small enough to be carried by infantry. This becomes especially useful in getting rid of shielded ground installations, where external strikes are ineffective. Infantry just need to enter the shield bubble, fire their payload, and get out of dodge. This was a basic rundown of both Tear Space and Orum, and I hope it shows how they both serve as a priceless strategic and technological edge that UGDF holds over its enemies. I also hope that you enjoyed the video. Just me rambling about FTL and power generation. It's something I've mentioned fairly often, but I realize people have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, so I just decided to make a video on both of them at once since they're both so connected. Also, feel free to ask me anything about this in the comments, like something I missed or something that I could clarify on. But yeah, that's it for now, and see you guys in the next video.